Hi there, I'm Nico Kritsotis, and welcome to another edition of The Direct Line, powered by 10Bet. On today's show, the bulk of it will be concerning Casey Botha. She's an assistant trainer to the powerful Roy Magner stable based out at Randkiesfontein. I called her in because it's just the end of Women's Month, and I wanted to find out what makes Casey Botha tick. We're going to talk to her about her introduction to horse racing, where she started off, and how she's got to where she is. So that's the bulk of today's show. Coming up at the end of the show, we'll look at Nico's notebook. And again, we discuss objections. Objections have again featured in the news in the past couple of weeks. And I wanted to delve more into that as to what's happened, particularly in Gqeberha, after chatting to the chief snipe down in that region. And we'll also have a look at the latest statistics for the South African racing season, which started on the 1st of August. We'll be looking into the top jockeys, the top apprentices, as well as the top trainers since the season began. So the Direct Line, powered by 10Bet, has a very special guest here today, and we are certainly very, very privileged to welcome Casey Botha to our studios. And Casey is involved with the Roy Magner stable. She's assistant trainer to the very, very strong yard based out of Randkiesfontein. She joins me now. Casey, thanks for coming in.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Now, a lot of people might still not know you. I know you've seen quite a bit around the tracks. You comment on the horses' chances often, and you are regularly seen at the races. How did you as Casey Botha get involved in horse racing? Take us back to the early days. I understand, just speaking to a couple of people, that you actually grew up in Zimbabwe. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. I was born in Zim in Chesapiti. I didn't really know Roy from those times of days or anything like that. We moved when I was fairly young. To be honest, I can't remember the exact year, but I was fairly young, did my schooling here. But I've always been involved in horses. My mom was a very good show jumper in Zim and here a little bit. So I grew up show jumping from pony days, and how I actually got into racing was through the none other than Gerald Sadler.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, really. Yeah. So initially, I've always had a knack for bloodstock, and I actually wanted to get into warm bloodstock to breed show jumpers like Henning Pistorius and like Callahoo do. So I spoke to Gerald over a breakfast that he invited me to because he said he had a few connections overseas. We went through to this breakfast with my grandfather, and next thing I was shipped off to Ireland through Gerald and Nigel Riley to work for a man called Joe Foley at his stud based out of Lachlan Bridge called Ballyhane. I only spent a few months there, but learned critical things revolving more around bloodstock than, racing itself. I was very privileged to work as a student at Drakenstein Stud for about a year and a half, doing the mares and foals. Spoke a lot with Kevin Somerville, and he really guided me in a big way. And then I went into pre-training for a further year and a half before returning to Joburg. And Rob Springer, who's sadly deceased now, he passed away. Yeah, my mum used to work for him at a company called Marsing, and he actually led me on to Roy. And I started at Roy as just to pick up a little bit of experience for a week. I'm now there for nearly 6 years.
Yeah, it's amazing.
No, it's been fantastic.
And of course, Roy is getting on in years. I mean, he's been a top-class trainer, ultimate respect. I mean, Roy and I've been racing in Zimbabwe in my days there for many years. He was a champion trainer in Zimbabwe, and then he moved down to South Africa. But he's got to be training for about 50 years, I think, roughly.
I think you're correct in saying that. I think he was champion trainer at the age of 21.
Yeah, he was. I think one of the youngest champion trainers.
One of the youngest champion trainers. Yeah, correct.
But his health isn't so good at the moment, and that's why you've been integral in his yard too, because he's not as he's obviously old now and growing old, but he's lost none of his zest for racing too. But it must be an absolute privilege working for the consummate professional that Roy is.
Yeah, he's an absolute professional, as you said. That yard is meticulous. I've learned so many valuable lessons from him, and I think one I would take away for life is his horsemanship. I don't think there's anyone in racing that has greater horsemanship than Roy. He loves his horses. He loves this game. His health is actually very much on the mend. He did have a little bit of a health scare recently. He underwent treatment and all of that, and everything is positive, looking up. He even quit smoking, if you can believe that.
I can't believe that.
Yeah, he's like been clean for 3 months
which
now.
is excellent news. But he's looking good again, as you say. But once you grow old, you do get the aches and pains. But one thing about Roy, he always wants to bounce back. I mean, that love for the horse that he's got is unparalleled.
Yeah, gosh, that man, I think he was out of hospital for all of 45 minutes and back in the yard.
Yeah. So what is so officially assistant trainer then to him, and what does that involve then? I mean, when he's not there, you obviously are the boss.
Yeah, I think he's still the boss. We chat on the phone if he's not there. He is back permanently now. But what an assistant entails is just to basically pick up on where the trainer can't. So, I spend a lot of time in the yards. I spend a lot of time with the actual horse itself. I pick up a lot of the veterinary work, such as like if the horse has a little bit of a cut, the bandaging, all of that. I attend race meetings, do the honors of saddling, leading in winners, which is fantastic.
And doing the winning interviews afterwards. What about the actual regime of choosing, nominating, and accepting horses? Is that left up to Roy?
So monthly, what will happen is we have a book that's got all the horses' names in it. I'll keep the merit ratings up to date. And then we have a guideline of like kind of what their suited distances are. And I will go through the nomination book a month prior, and I will fill in or pencil in where I think a horse should run. And then Roy will go over it and pen and say, okay, he agrees, or, maybe I've missed a race and he'll place a horse. Then in the mornings of nominations, we'll sit down together, log onto the trainer's app and nominate. And, generally speaking, the official decision lies with Roy, but he's open to my suggestions or input.
Yeah. And then the actual training regimes in the morning where you go out, work out, I don't know exactly how it works, but you work out that a horse is going to go for a long gallop or a canter or a hack canter or so forth. Who works, or have you learned quite a bit about that? Do you know, could you do it on your own?
Yeah, I could definitely do it on my own by now. Jeez, yeah. I haven't missed a track morning and I don't know how long. But
do you enjoy that part of the work?
That I think is my favorite part. It's a bit misleading because some of our horses work like rockets.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But so essentially every trainer is different, and that depends on how far you want to go in the mornings or what particular track you want to go on. Generally speaking, though, Roy starts our horses up with like a 600 canter in the beach track. And that's kind of our foundation of where we're going to start. So, every horse will start with on pace work days, we call a 6-4. So they'll canter from the 600, work from the 400. And then it's kind of mixing and matching. Your lighter fillies, oftentimes you'll keep them in that beach track because you don't really want them to shrivel up into ribs and all of that. But, your horses that are a bit more plump, or your colts, and we'll start going 1,000 on the red track, and they'll canter off from the 1,000, do some work from like the 400. And then a big part that we do is sit down every month and plan where horses are going. If they've been at the race course for a little bit, we'll plan a grass gallop, choose who we're going to match them up with, all of that type of things.
Yeah, which is amazing stuff. And I'm trying to get my team actually to go out to Rankiesfontein and have a visit there to actually see how you guys train the horses. You've got a biggish yard, may I say, and you've always attracted patrons to your yard. One thing that struck me is how good you guys are with your juveniles. And I know that Uncle Roy, as I'm going to call him here, is very keen on winning these 100,000 Rand bonus checks that are provided by the sales companies. Tends to win a lot of them. And as we know, the juvenile season will start towards the end of the year in December. What's your current crop of 2-year-olds looking like?
I must say, over the last 2 to 3 years, we're struggling a little bit on support of juveniles, not because we don't have patrons, but because the yearling prices are incredibly high.
Yeah, they are.
And I'm very happy for the breeders. I think it's commendable that they're breeding such quality stock that they're getting the prices. But unfortunately, for people like us who have quite a stern budget, a decent budget, but a stern budget, we've missed out on quite a few purchases, particularly over the last 2 years. So whereas we bring in 22 juveniles, last year I think we bought maybe 10. And this season we're on 10 because we really pushed at these last sales. I'm very happy with what we've bought.
Did you buy now the sales that
sure,
were last
I'm very
week?
happy with what we've bought.
Did you?
Yeah. We've bought some nice juvenile types. So hopefully we've got some of those juvenile bonuses lined up for next season.
And those you've got to treat with kid gloves, because obviously some horses aren't 2-year-olds, and to push them, you're not. Roy and yourselves have never been one to push a 2-year-old to make it a 2-year-old. You'd rather be a better 3-year-old.
Correct, I agree. I think it's better having 3-year-olds. And I think over recent years, we've maybe lost our knack a little bit for juveniles because we've purchased horses to go a bit more of a trip as 3-year-olds and all of that. I think a very exciting horse within our barn is a horse called King Harold.
He is. But he's been a bit on the disappointing side. Do you think maybe he should have just waited for a 3-year-old career?
I think he might have been better off waiting for a 3-year-old career, but he won his debut quite well. His next run, I don't know if you watched the nursery, but he was so badly bulked for a run. And then his third start was very disappointing. But I do believe that second start might have played a bit of havoc mentally. I think he's a bit immature. If you look at him, physically speaking, the amount that he has matured in the last 4 months is unbelievable. I mean, suddenly he looks like a colt, So.
He's an Eric the Red, is he?
Yes, correct. Yeah, half to Lucky Lad.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Who's actually this last season had great results as a freshman sire.
Correct.
Jockeys wise, you don't have a stable jockey.
Not necessarily. We ride the wave as it comes and goes. Muzi Yeni's been incredibly successful for us. Gavin Larena will always have a special place in Roy's heart, so he's oftentimes the one that's on most of the winners. Raymond Danielson rides an incredible amount of our work, and credit where credit's due. He really works hard in our yard and guides us correctly. So he rides quite a bit and deserves the success that he gets within the yard. Other than that, apprentices wise, James Lahaba, he's riding a lot for us and he's doing well for us. But we kind of mix and match. We went through a patch where Serena was riding quite well for us as well.
Just as a female in the industry and as a young person in the industry, how are we faring as a South African racing industry in looking after the woman in racing and looking after the younger people in racing? Do you think we can go a little bit more to doing better on that front?
Increase our salaries. No, I think we're pretty fair. I've never felt discriminated against being a woman in the industry. I feel that the men within the industry are very respectful. As I said, I've never felt untoward or anything like that. I think as a young person, what would be nice is to see fellow young people within the industry, and that's quite rare.
I mean, amongst your mates, for example, do you bring them? They must be very interested in what you're doing and how well you're succeeding at it. Do they often come racing with you or say they want to come?
I must say I'm very blessed with the people in my life that are so supportive of my work and all of that. My mom, you'll see she's at racing often with me. My boyfriend, he couldn't be more supportive if he tried. He's there often. And a lot of my friends are keen and we bring them through. And we've got a special interest in the Summer Cup. We always do the Summer Cup together and it's a big group of friends. I think where racing could maybe improve is encouraging younger assistants or people like that to bring their friends along to racing. Actually, if I wanted to attend the Summer Cup now with my friends, it's half a fortune. Maybe I'm not saying freebies, but certainly reduction would be quite incentives to bring our friends racing. Because I've got a lot of friends that, whilst they're young now, they're building careers, and once they're at the peak of their career, you would think that they would afford racehorses and would like to own racehorses.
And ultimately, you probably want your own trainer's license.
Yeah,
the bug has really bitten by the looks of things.
The bug has bitten. It's definitely something to consider and something within the 5-year plan. Under discussions with Roy, the next step would probably be to be a joint partner in training, like James Crawford's done with his father Brett, and like Michael and Adam Azzi have done. So essentially, that would probably be the next step. I don't want to put a timeline on it, but that would be the next step.
And that will be a big thing for you as Casey Botha, because to be with a name like Roy Magner, sharing the stage with him after he's really been there and done it and got the T-shirt, I mean, it would be a huge feather in your cap.
No, I mean, I'm incredibly honored to even be discussing this, and to have the possibility of this. Roy has been so instrumental in my career, but I do have to start a career for myself eventually. I'm young now, but I'm not getting any younger.
Yes.
So obviously it will be a big dream of mine, and hopefully that comes to hand.
Spring is in the air as well. We're starting our feature races coming up for the season as part of the Magner stable. Which horses are you most excited to follow during the upcoming months going into our big races?
I think a horse that, obviously at the tip of my tongue is Olivia's Way. She's been sensational for us. She could not work worse at home. You could not work her with your weakest maiden.
Really?
So,
and was she like that from word go?
From word go. She's actually improved a bit. When we first started, I thought, oh no, we're in trouble here. But she's been an absolute joy to have. She recently underwent a little minor surgery. She got a bit of an injury to her eye in the stable. I don't know, quite a little freak accident. So that was a bit of a shock and a bit of a scare, but she's back in full force and she'll be targeting the Summer Cup. So she'll probably debut over a 14, have a feature debut over a 1450.
And you mentioned Gerald Sadler. It's done full circle because you've ended up being involved in the training and introduced you to wanting to be a trainer. And he's got to be one of the biggest, larger than life characters in horse racing.
Oh, I agree.
Worldwide, not only in South Africa.
Yeah, I fully agree. Look, he's a fantastic man. He's helped me a lot. Even to today, he helps me, with whatever I need. I laughed at him the last time Olivia won, where they said, they're not placing bets on if the horse will win, they're placing bets if Gerald will cry.
Yeah. Well, people don't know whether he's crying or he's laughing. So it's particularly difficult to tell. But he bred the horse. So he's got every right to be emotional about it because she is, and I had a chance actually to chat to him because we traveled down to Durban for the Durban July together. And we chatted quite a bit about Olivia's Way, and I have great admiration for that horse. I think it's got a huge win on the horizon. Not that she hasn't done well already, but she definitely is a horse that I'd be looking out for too.
No, I agree. And that stand side 2000, maybe if it's a little wet, that's going to suit her down to the T. But yeah, she actually had a full sister born last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, very nice. Looks just like her. Got the same little white marking, Bay filly.
That's magnificent. Yeah. What other horses, Casey?
Kamensky shows incredible work, and I hold him in high regard. I don't know quite yet if he stays. He's actually running on Saturday. We've dropped him back to a 12 just to start off his prep for the season. But, his goal will be the charity mile, which I think is going to be right up his alley. He'll sneak in there at the weights. So I think he's got a big one in his cap. Grade 1 level, I'm unsure, but I certainly think that he'll challenge in the feature season. And then we've still got our old faithful, Melech or Milech or Malech, however you want to say it.
Well, how does John Finlayson want it pronounced?
In all these years of John being at the yard, I don't think he's ever spoken to me on the phone and said Malech or Milech or it's Hebrew for
I
king.
pronounce it Melech, I think, the way that I'm pronouncing it in commentaries and so forth. But he's a damn good horse.
He really is. He's just been plagued a little bit. He's either been very unfortunate in running and found a bit of interference, or it's been quite tricky to find what distance suits him because although he's a simple, straightforward horse, he's quite challenging on race day. He doesn't like to race two-handy. If you race him two-handy, he doesn't have a finish. But if you have him a bit further back, he finds a massive finish. So I think he's a 1400 horse, ideally. He'll head for that spring challenge, which is a 1450. He ran a creditable race in it last year. He ran 5th. Gladiatorian beat him for 4th, just beat him. And he was drawn, I think, 14 or 14. That's another thing, is this horse could not buy a draw.
Yeah, it's just plagued with bad draws.
Bad draws. And then, further than that, obviously I touched on King Harold. He's a lovely individual. And then we still have our hard knockers, Max the Magician. He's got a few more wins left in him. Some of them in the lower handicaps that are doing quite well. Super awesome. It's personal. They're always great. We've got a few maidens like Vamanos, who's quite a nice individual. Probably just haven't found her correct distance yet. Stone of Scones, due a win. So there's some ones on the up, definitely.
Just before you leave us, so what do you do in your spare time? What makes you tick outside? I know that you're quite active.
I'm quite active, but spare time's a bit limited these days. So I gym probably 5 times a week. I've got to try stay fit. My family battles being on the heavier side, so we've all got to work that much harder. So I gym quite a lot. I've recently gotten into paddle, which I'm enjoying. Not saying I'm good.
Because that's taken off in horse racing. I know that trainer Johan Janssen van Vuren is a massive paddle fan, and so too is the chief operating officer for racing, Colin Gordon. They play a lot of paddle, so it's gone through the racing ranks too.
Yeah, I play a lot with Ashley Lido, who works for Sean Tarry. Yeah, she was telling me the other day, Van Vuren's quite a great paddle player. Yeah. And
how's it going? Is it improving?
I'm not great, but I try.
Yeah. Good. Well, nice to have you in the studio, Casey Botha. We're wishing you all the best. I know that amongst the journalists that I speak to, they love chatting to you because you give insight into what your horses are going to do or not going to do on race day. And I really wanted to interview you. And just at the tail end of Women's Month, I've managed to do it. So thanks very much for coming in, and all the best with your future career and with the Roy Magner stable.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the Direct Line and to the crew for having me, and to yourself. Thank you,
Thank
Nico.
you. Thanks, Casey. So welcome to this week's Nico's Notebook. I've made a few notes of what we're going to be discussing on the notebook. And the first one is regarding objections, because the news regarding objections has reared its ugly head again in the news. And I chatted to Chief Stipendiary Steward Langa Doos down in the Eastern Cape. He heads up the NHA's stipendiary board down there, about the recent objections that have taken place down at Fairview. Now, we've seen a couple of objections which have been lodged by the connections that have been overruled. And in a couple of circumstances as well, that objection fee has been forfeited. And basically, the reason why it's forfeited is because the objection board deems it unnecessary for that objection to have been lodged in the first place. Trainers and connections of horses need to be ultimately dead sure of themselves when they lodge an objection that the horse that interfered with their horse that they're objecting on behalf of would have been beaten by the horse that they're objecting on behalf of too. And sometimes it is not always the case, unless the distance between the two horses affected is probably less than a length. Chances of that objection being upheld are very, very slim. And the objection board has every right to forfeit the fee after the objection has been lodged. Now, I looked at the rules, and this is Rule 69 in the NHA rules, and it reads as follows: 69.3, when an objection is lodged in terms of Rule 68.2.6, the objection shall not be upheld unless the objection board is satisfied that a placed horse was interfered with by another placed horse and or its rider during a race, and the horse which was interfered with would, but for the interference, have finished ahead of the horse which caused the interference, in which event the objection board shall place the horse which caused the interference behind the horse which was interfered with, or it may disqualify the horse which caused the interference. And that is important to note, because you have to be 100% sure that the horse that caused interference to your horse, the interference was so bad that you would have, not that you could have, that you would have beaten that horse had it not have been for the interference. And in most cases, the decision will go against you. Certainly, if, for example, in the one objection, the horse that was objected for on behalf of finished fourth against the winner, and there was 2 3/4 lengths between them, I think was the official winning distance. And those two horses are not affected by the second and third horses. So what it means is, if the objection board were to uphold that result, that fourth horse would have to be put in front of the first horse. And what happens to the second and third horses? Where do they go? They're not involved in the altercation over here. So how can that fourth horse beat the first horse but not beat the second and the third horses? It is definitely one that trainers need to look carefully at before they lodge an objection. And that is what the point of what I'm saying is. Sometimes trainers are not fully aware of the rules, or some connections are not fully aware of the rules before they lodge an objection. And ultimately, that fee is forfeited and it is lost and goes into the ether. Stipendiary Steward Langa Doos is well equipped to deal with these situations. And I had a chat with him earlier on in the week to discuss this, and he must be complimented, him and his team, for making the right decisions in each one of the latest 3 objections taking place down in the Eastern Cape. The recent one, which was on Monday, was concerning jockey Marco van Rensburg up against jockey Malasela Kachedi. It was the horses Outback Express and Cheap Thrills that were involved in a scuffle. And the public out there were also querying as to why the Stipendiary Stewards Board don't lodge the objection, why they leave it up to the connections to lodge the objection. The connections do have the time, once they cross the finish line, up until the all clear has been announced, to lodge that objection. It's a window period of probably between 3 and 5 minutes where they've got the chance to. The objection board like the connections to lodge the objection because then ultimately all of the stipendiary stewards are able to hear that objection. If one of the stipendiary stewards lodges the objection, then the person that lodges the objection is therefore taken out of the equation to hear the objection. because you can't act as judge and jury. So what they would like is for a connection to lodge the objection. They did call a race review in this instance, and trainer Jean Nel eventually objected on behalf of Cheap Thrills against the original winner, Outback Express. They did get the decision. Once again, thumbs up to Langa and his team because they made the right call. The objection was upheld because the interference, with there only being a short head between the two, was deemed to be significant and altered the ultimate result of the race. Well, we've almost had 4 weeks of the new racing season since the 1st of August, and we're looking at the stats right now of how the trainers, jockeys and apprentices are faring thus far. It is so interesting to note that Alan Greef has lost no momentum from last season, where he was given a special award at the Equus Awards for his outstanding achievement, certainly with his 2-year-old fillies, but he actually tops the trainer's log for the current season with a figure of over R1 million in stake money. He is ahead of Tony Peter, who's having a great start to his season, 9 wins and 741,000 Rand in stakes. Gavin Smith is back in third. He's got 645,000 Rand in stake money. And then Johan Janssen and Furence stable has really started off with a bang, and they are on 620,000. And another Eastern Cape trainer, Kelly Mitchley, has started her season well. She's back in that 5th position, followed by Stuart Ferry, Justin Snaith, last season's champion, St. John Gray, Mike and Matthew de Kock, and Fani Bronkhorst is the top 10 in the trainers log. Then we move on to the jockeys, and Craig Zaki and Muzi Yeni are currently joint leaders with 15 wins apiece, rather. Craig Zaki and Muzi Yeni leading on 15 wins. Serena Mudley is just behind them on 14. Samanga Kamalo is on 13. Breaking news that Samanga Kamalo has broken up with his longtime agent, Monty Maramutu. We may cover more on that on next week's show, but we hear that there's been an amicable separation between agent Monty Maramutu and jockey Samanga Kamalo, who's on 13 winners. Calvin Habib is having a good start at 12 winners. Chad Little and Louis Mkotwa are on 8 winners. Callan Murray's on 7, and Tristan Godden and Pilasande Mkoli are on 6. And we have also issued an invite to the apprentice academy master in Gauteng, Robert Moore. We've asked him to bring in some of his apprentices, and we're looking forward to seeing some of them, I hope, on next week's show. We'll monitor that and see the progress. But the leading apprentice rider, of which we've got a great amount of respect for, is Mkolisi Mbuto, who has booted home 6 winners just so far in the season. Kobedi Dahaba's on 3. The apprentice Plykies, Brevin Plykies, is on 2, and we have quite a few with just the 1 winner for the season. Those are the latest racing statistics, and you've heard it here on the Direct Line. So our crack 3-year-old from last racing season, One Stripe, who earned the title of Champion Miler at the Equus Awards held a couple of weeks ago, arrived safely in America, and trainer Graham Motion is preparing him for his American debut, which will take place probably in the next few weeks. He put out a good workout when he went out on the training tracks just the other day. And the major race that he'll be going for is on Breeders' Cup weekend. That's the World Championship of Horse Racing, which takes place at the beginning of October. And he's likely to target the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup miles. That's very, very exciting times for not only the owners of One Stripe, but also for all the South African racing followers. We'll be following that with keen interest, how One Stripe does in America. And that'll wrap it up for another edition of the Direct Line powered by 10Bet. It's been a great pleasure hosting today's show, and do have a great racing week up ahead. We'll catch you again next week. Bye-bye for me.